It is Monday. It is the 26th of May. You're watching ARIRANG, Korea's only global network. Live from Seoul, I'm Moon Kwon-young. China's top diplomat is in Seoul on this Monday for talks expected to center around getting North Korea to give up its nuclear program. Now, what he's also expected to do is to fine-tune the details of his president's scheduled visit to South Korea next month. ARIRANG News Foreign Affairs correspondent Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi arrived in Seoul Monday for talks with his South Korean counterpart Yun Byung-se. This is the Chinese diplomat's first visit to South Korea since taking office in March of last year. North Korea's ongoing threat of a fourth nuclear test is expected to top the agenda in talks, during which the two sides will reaffirm their joint commitment toward Pyongyang's denuclearization and discuss ways to bring the isolated regime back to the negotiating table. At the same time, the officials may fine-tune details of a visit by Chinese President Xi Jinping to Seoul. Xi is expected to make his first trip to South Korea since becoming president as early as next month. Another pending issue on the table is Japan's denial of its historical wrongdoings and its push for collective self-defense. Both nations, major victims of Tokyo's past militarism, have voiced concerns over the Abe administration's pursuit to revise its pacifist constitution without fully recognizing its wartime atrocities. The Chinese foreign minister will wrap up his two-day stay in Seoul by paying a visit to President Park Geun-hye at the presidential office on Tuesday. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, there is another round of talks underway between two other key players in the Northeast Asian region. North Korea and Japan are holding government-level talks in Sweden for 3 days starting this Monday. Tokyo is expected to once again demand an investigation into the issue of Japanese abductees. Pyongyang will likely call for eased sanctions in return. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Senior officials from North Korea and Japan will sit down for government-level talks on this Monday in Stockholm, following up on the two countries' first talks in more than a year in March. The North Korean delegation will be led by Song Il-ho, its ambassador for handling relations with Japan, while Junichi Hara, chief of the Asian and Oceanian Affairs Bureau at Japan's Foreign Ministry, will lead the Japanese delegation. A range of issues are expected to be discussed during the three-day meeting, but the Japanese abductee issue will likely top the agenda. Tokyo is again expected to call for a reinvestigation into the whereabouts of Japanese nationals who were allegedly abducted by Pyongyang in the 1970s and 80s. This time, it reportedly plans to get a promise from the North in the form of a document.
The Abe administration has a strong determination to solve the abductee issue no matter what, and will consider all methods.
North Korea will likely demand Japan to ease sanctions in return.
We plan to negotiate on issues regarding how to implement the North Korea-Japan-Pyongyang Declaration and also any issues that could follow after the implementation.
Attention is also on whether the North Korean delegation will include an official from its state security agency. The agency reportedly played a big role during the visit of then-Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi to Pyongyang in 2002. Likewise, Japan is also expected to slot in a cabinet official that handles North Korean affairs. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And on to the investigation surrounding the sunken Seoul ferry disaster. Authorities are convinced that they are this close to finding the fugitive owner of the ferry, Yun Byung-se. They have tracked him to the southern region of the country where they believe he's still hiding out. Our Connie Lee has the details.
It was at this rest stop where one of Korea's most wanted men was last seen. Prosecutors have confirmed that Yun Byung-se, the de facto owner of the sunken Seoul ferry, was here in the city of Suncheon, about 400 kilometers south of Seoul, up until a few days ago. The married owners of a restaurant and guest house here have been detained on suspicion of helping Yu evade arrest. Police have also arrested at least 3 others for hindering the hunt for Yu. Police say all those in custody are members of the Salvation Sect, which is a religious cult led by the ferry owner. With the latest developments, authorities now believe they were very close to finding Yu. They say he's no longer in Suncheon, but they do believe he's still hiding out somewhere in southern Korea, because his children and several members of his cult are known to own land and businesses there. In the meantime, prosecutors have dramatically increased the cash reward for anyone with information on Yu's whereabouts. Officials have upped their bounty from $50,000 to $500,000, which is the highest amount Korean authorities have ever offered in such a case. The cash reward for information on his eldest son, Yoo Dae-gyun, has also gone up from $30,000 to nearly $100,000. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Now, back here in this country, the focus in recent days has largely been on improving safety following last month's ferry disaster. But on this Monday, another deadly accident has added to the anguish and uncertainty here in Korea. A fire at a bus terminal in the city of Goyang, Gyeonggi-do province this morning killed 6 and injured more than 30 others. Actually, that number is rising to roughly 60 to 70, and even the death toll is expected to rise even further. The blaze broke out shortly after 9 a.m. during rush hour in the basement of the station located just northwest of Seoul, and was brought under control after roughly 20 minutes. Now, authorities have yet to determine the blaze, but firefighters believe welding operations at a construction site in the basement could have played a role. The news last week that President Park Geun-hye accepted the resignations of her presidential security advisor and the nation's intelligence chief caught more political observers off guard. However, given the ever-present threat posed by North Korea, the president is expected to waste little time in selecting their replacements. Choi Yu-sun reports.
The question on many people's minds is whether both posts will be filled by those from a military background. Both former security advisor Kim Jang-soo and former head of the National Intelligence Service Nam Jae-jun came from the military, both having served as the Army Chief of Staff. Despite the view of some pundits that the hardline stances of the military-dominant security chiefs have further strained inter-Korean ties, the speculation is that President Park will tap the military ranks again for her new security advisor. This amid North Korea's continued military and nuclear threat in the region. Defense Minister Kim Kwan-jin is one of the names reportedly under consideration. As for the next NIS chief, someone from the diplomatic or judicial community who has experience with the spy agency could be nominated. Possible candidates include former spy agency deputy director and current ambassador to Japan, Yun Byung-se, and former prosecutor and current ambassador to China, Hwang Sung-hee. Both Yi and Kwan were close aides to the president during the 2007 and 2012 presidential elections. However, the announcements could be delayed as both the ruling and opposition sides have raised concerns President Park's recent nominations for key posts centered too much around figures from the judicial community and Korea's southeastern region. With their approval ratings rising after a recent apology over the ferry disaster and the local elections just a little more than a week away, the pending appointments come at a crucial point. There's also speculation that a reshuffle within the presidential office could occur as early as this week. Choi Yu-sun, ARIRANG News.
We're now about 9 days away from the local elections here in this country, and more voters are turning their backs on Korea's two biggest political parties and toward independent candidates leading up to next week's local elections. ARIRANG News political correspondent Jun Byung-se reports on the say these voters will have come June 4th.
The closer we draw to election day, the more apparent it becomes that voters will favor independent candidates, especially in the city of Busan, a conservative stronghold, and Gwangju, the traditional home ground of liberals. Of all voters on election day, nearly 44% are undecided about who they will vote for, according to a survey conducted by mBrain. And of that total, more than half of the respondents said they would vote for independent candidates. This holds extra meaning in Busan and Gwangju. In the ruling Saenuri Party's home turf of Busan, polls show independent candidate Oh Go-don up by nearly 4 percentage points over the ruling party's Heo Byung-soo in the race for the mayor. Oh's popularity saw a boost after a candidacy merger on May 16th with Kim Young-chun of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy in an effort to unite liberal votes. Over in the race for mayor of Gwangju, right in the middle of the main opposition's home ground, the Liberal candidate Yun Byung-se finds himself trailing behind two independent candidates, Kang Won-tae and Lee Yong-se. And it could get worse for him as polls show that if the two independent candidates were to merge, Kang's polling numbers would double those of Yun's. Lee and Kang withdrew from the main opposition party to run as independents in protest of party co-leader An Cheol-soo's influence in the nomination of Yun. According to the National Election Commission on Monday, some 2.4 million more people will be able to vote in these local elections, up 6.3% from the last ones in 2010. The increase was attributed to the aging and growth of Korea's overall population. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
And now, this just coming in, and just a few minutes ago, independent candidates for the city's mayoral candidate for the city of Gwangju in southern Korea declared a candidacy merger between independent candidates, Kang Won-tae and Lee Yong-se, who we just talked about in Kim Young-gil's report, with Kang being the sole candidate for the city of Gwangju.
When the latest news meets the latest business stories, we give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Business Today with Moon Gon-young. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
Now, Thailand's monarchy has officially endorsed the nation's military to run the country. Army Commander General Prayut Chan-o-cha said he received the endorsement Monday from the Thai king, which gives last week's coup legitimacy. Now, soon afterwards, the Thai general released 13 leaders of anti-government protests. Prayut made the announcement during his first press conference since Thursday's military takeover, one day after the military junta warned of a crackdown on civilian opposition to its takeover. Meanwhile, Pope Francis is on a 3-day trip to the Middle East, and during his visit to Palestine, he's been making a number of unprecedented moves, making an unannounced symbolic stop at a wall separating Israel and Palestine, and inviting leaders from both sides of the divide to pray at the Vatican. Pope Francis is doing the annual papal trip his way. Here's Connie Kim with this report.
Pope Francis's first official visit to the Holy Land has been a succession of unprecedented moves calling for peace in Israel and Palestine. Breaking with the custom of only meeting with high-ranking officials in visiting countries, the pontiff instead chose to meet with refugees from Syria and Iraq in Bethany, where Jesus was baptized. There, he called on the international community to support the refugees.
I ask that the international society does not turn away from refugees and continue to send support for this issue.
In another first, the Pope flew straight from Jordan to Bethlehem by helicopter, bypassing Israel to show Palestine is an independent state. The Pope also made a surprise stop in front of the concrete wall that separates Bethlehem from Jerusalem. For Palestinians, the structure is a symbol of Israeli oppression. Laying his head against the wall, Pope Francis quietly said his prayers.
My interpretation of his praying is, let God bless Palestinians and Israelis in order to destroy this wall and to build on this place a reality of peace.
In another powerful visual statement, Pope Francis has decided to travel in a white, open-sided Pope mobile instead of a bulletproof automobile. The trip comes after Middle East peace talks broke down last week. The Argentinian pontiff said the breakdown was unacceptable, and in an apparently spontaneous move, he invited the presidents of both sides to the Vatican next month to pray for peace. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Well, this is a warning for those of you frequent air travelers. Airplanes may be one of the most convenient and fastest way to get around, but they're certainly not the cleanest. A U.S. research team says bacteria that could cause illnesses stay alive on various parts of the plane for even up to a week. Our Polly reports.
From armrests to seats and tray tables, just about anything you come into contact with on airplanes will be swarming with disease-causing bacteria. And making matters worse, these dangerous germs can linger for days. A team of researchers at Auburn University took actual parts of an airplane and examined the ability of bacteria to survive on their surfaces in real cabin conditions. The experiment found that methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus survived for 6 days on armrests and 5 days on tray tables. The bacteria, which is resistant to almost all drugs and can be life-threatening, lived up to a week inside seat pockets. The E. coli bacteria, which can cause intestinal inflammation, thrived for 4 days on armrests and 3 days on tray tables.
We figured out that these pathogens can remain on these surfaces over a week, and there is a high risk of them being transmitted from these surfaces to the fingers of the passengers.
A U.S. airline company, however, said that passengers shouldn't be worried, as disinfection procedures are routinely carried out inside the cabins every day. But experts advise passengers should wash their hands frequently and bring along a packet of sanitary wipes just to be safe. Paul Yi, ARIRANG News.
In yet another major development in the global chat app wars, Korea's largest mobile messenger service, KakaoTalk, and the nation's #2 internet portal company, Daum Communications, have announced their plans to merge through an equity swap. This will be the largest merger involving internet-based companies here in Korea and could pose a threat to the nation's biggest search engine, Naver. Our Na Hyun-kyung has more on the creation of a company worth $3 billion.
It will be called Daum Kakao, and the new company will keep Korea's #1 web portal Naver on its toes, according to industry insiders. Daum Communications and Kakao on Monday announced merger with a share swap ratio of 2-3. That means every 2 shares of Daum will be equivalent to 3 shares of Kakao. Daum was founded in 1995 and was the biggest and most popular web portal at the time in Korea, but with the rise of Naver in the early 2000s, it started to lose ground in the market. Daum, which is currently listed on the tech-heavy Kosdaq, is valued at more than 1 trillion won or $1 billion, while the unlisted Kakao is estimated to be worth $2.3 billion. KakaoTalk is used by virtually every smartphone user in Korea. The words the heads of the two companies used were creating synergy effects when describing the merger. Daum's backlog of data will be beneficial to Kakao, while Kakao's mobile platform will help Daum expand into overseas markets. But industry watchers are interpreting this as uniting against Naver. Naver, which is listed on the benchmark Kospi, has a market capitalization of $25 billion. Na Hyun-kyung, ARIRANG News.
Now, longer lifespans coupled with a frozen retirement age, you have people spending less on a day-to-day basis than they did 10 years ago, all to make sure they have enough saved up for the golden years. A survey by the Korea Development Institute shows that the average spending index dropped for all age groups in the 10-year span ending in 2013. The average age for the head of the household also went up over that time from 44 to 48, and those reaching retirement age were the most likely to skimp up on their daily expenditures as they plan for life after retirement. The institute says that the government should come up with measures to extend the retirement age and reduce the cost of private education, as it is taking up a large chunk of household expenditures for families with school-aged children. Korea's finance minister is calling on the government and the private sector to work hand in hand to speed up the pace of the economic recovery. Hyun Suk made the remarks Monday at a meeting with other policymakers where he also asked businesses to advance investments. Now, he said that while domestic consumption is picking up after the Seoul ferry disaster, stronger momentum is critical. Private spending plunged last month in the wake of the ferry's sinking. Minister Hyun went on to say that the government will continue to cut red tape to boost job creation and investment. Well, if this early hot weather is any indication, the summer is sure going to suck a lot of energy out of the nation's power grid. It's gotten the government and those in the energy industry on their toes, as the Korean public is no stranger to power shortages or even blackouts during the hot and sticky summer season. The Korea Power Exchange has released a report regarding energy demand and supply in this country. Our regular contributor, Dr. Kim Byung-se, joins us live on the phone to tell us more. Hello there, Dr. Kim. It's another warm day here in Korea, and I certainly hope you're staying cool and dry. But as for last summer, we remember all too well the difficult times we had for electric power supply. And the KPE, or the Korea Power Exchange, released a report yesterday, right?
Right, exactly. And I'm trying to stay as cool as possible here, as you asked. But anyway, yeah, going back to the main point here, the Korea Power Exchange released a new report yesterday. Interesting thing is, last year, altogether here in Korea, in terms of power generation failures, we had seen about 238 cases altogether. And this was a dramatic rise indeed, as many as 42 cases more than the previous year, 2012. And this is about 21% rise in this kind of disruptions in power generation. And interestingly, since you mentioned summer indeed was found to be the season where we saw the most cases. Between June and August, we saw 79 cases of power generation failures. And as compared to the winter season of December through February, it was like 20 cases more. And June was the peak month last year. We saw 32 interruptions in terms of power generation failures. And so indeed, once again, the summer seems to be the really peak season for disruption in power supply.
No, I suppose the reason we see more power supply disruptions in summertime is, of course, the high electricity demand that causes full capacity operations of power generators of all kinds in this country.
Right, indeed. You know, the overload in power generation facilities and machinery and so on was the key reason. And they're saying almost 9 out of 10 cases were because of the lack of preparation in dealing with overload was the case. Interestingly, gas power generation was the cases we saw the largest number of accidents and disruptions. Of course, they go on with a smaller scale, so that's okay. In nuclear power generation, we saw actually a reduction in terms of disruptions, about 6 cases altogether. But since nuclear power takes up so much portion in terms of entire power supply, we just seem to feel that, last year we saw just so many of nuclear power generation failures. But in terms of number of cases, that was not the case.
And good news that we're getting is that they say the summer will not be as bad as last year's because it's not going to be as hot for one.
Right. It doesn't feel like right at this point. It feels like a pretty hot enough here now. But they're saying this June will be a little bit tough. It will be over average temperature, hotter than average this June. But they're saying July and August, we will see this El Nino phenomena, which can actually keep the Korean peninsula cooler than usual. So in that case, we're expecting weaker demand for electricity power. They're saying when we see a 1 degree increase in terms of our temperature, we should expect 1 million kilowatt more of electricity power demand. And now expecting cooler summer, especially July and August, they're saying the overall power demand would be lower this year.
But and not only that, the supply situation is also going to be better.
Right, indeed. That's a very important point. And for those expat viewers and viewers overseas who are wondering about the power supply situation here in Korea, actually we will have more nuclear power coming in indeed. We will have a few nuclear power generators who will not be operating because of the scheduled maintenance, but still we have new nuclear power generators coming in Shinwolsung 2. That's a new facility that will supply 1 million kilowatt more. And then we have our combined power generation facilities that will come in. So altogether by the end of August, we are expecting about 90 billion kilowatt supply. And they're saying this year, the peak demand probably will be 80 billion rather than 90 billion kilowatts. So we will have plenty as an extra supply available. So if we take these words at their face value, I think we can expect more comfortable summer this year.
Well, definitely we hope to stay cool and dry this summer, and hopefully the energy supply and demand, of course, will be better this time around. Dr. Kim Byung-se, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
And that's your business today on this Monday. Thank you for watching. And do join us again at 6 p.m. Korea time on Early Edition at 6.